He lost me to the truth he created. Full 30-minute read story, no headings. He once told me that truth was the most important thing in any relationship. He said it so confidently, so convincingly, that I believed him without question. I didn't know then that the same truth he claimed to protect would eventually be the one that destroyed us. It wasn't my truth. It wasn't our truth. It was the truth he created, carefully shaped, slowly rehearsed, and perfectly timed until even he began to believe it. And that truth, the one he fed himself every day, ended up costing him the person who loved him the most. I remember the first signs, the small cracks in the facade he worked so hard to maintain. They weren't obvious at first. They came in the form of late replies, unexplained exhaustion, and a certain impatience he never used to have. He would sit next to me, but somehow feel miles away, as if he were listening to an invisible voice only he could hear. I told myself relationships go through phases. People get busy. Stress happens. I didn't want to assume the worst, because loving him had always meant giving him the benefit of the doubt. But doubt grows even in the most trusting hearts. One evening, as he scrolled through his phone with a smile, he quickly hid when I walked into the room. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't jealousy. It was instinct, the kind that whispers without shouting, the kind that tells you something is wrong long before the truth appears. He claimed it was work. It was always work. But I had seen him talk about work, and it never looked like that. Still, I said nothing. I had learned long ago that silence was often the most dangerous weapon. It reveals more than words ever could. When you stay quiet, the other person fills the silence with their own imagination and sometimes their guilt. He started correcting small things about me, details he once found endearing. The way I laughed too loudly. The way I asked too many questions. The way I texted when he was working. The way I wanted clarity when he preferred space. He said I was too emotional, too reactive, too sensitive. It took me a shameful amount of time to realize he was building a narrative, not about us, but about me. A narrative where he was the misunderstood victim and I was the unreasonable partner. A narrative that conveniently justified every lie he planned to tell in the future. And slowly, I began to shrink inside myself. Whenever he pulled away, he blamed my behavior. Whenever he lied, he blamed my assumptions. Whenever he avoided conversations, he blamed my timing. Whenever he grew distant, he blamed my questions. I didn't know it then, but he was preparing a clean exit. The kind that made him look noble while I looked hysterical. I only learned the full truth much later, when the story he created collapsed under the weight of reality. She wasn't a stranger. She wasn't someone he met accidentally. She was someone he had been talking to for months, someone who helped him write the narrative where I was the villain and he was the poor man trapped in a suffocating relationship. Someone who made him feel like a hero for walking away from me, not a coward for betraying me. He didn't lose me when he cheated. He didn't lose me when he lied. He didn't even lose me when I discovered everything. He lost me the moment he started believing the lies he told. He lost me when he looked me in the eyes and said, "You're imagining things," while he knew very well he was hiding her in every unanswered message. He lost me when he convinced himself that my reactions were the problem, not his actions. He lost me when he stopped seeing me as a person with feelings and started seeing me as an obstacle to the fantasy he had created. Because once a person no longer sees you clearly, once they replace you with a version of you that fits their excuses, you can't stay, not even if you love them. The day everything came out was painfully quiet. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry the way movies teach you to. I simply sat across from him at our kitchen table and listened as he explained his truth. The truth he had stitched together piece by piece until even he forgot where the lies ended and where the honesty began. He said he felt unappreciated. He said he felt cornered. He said he felt pushed away. Not once did he say he had been dishonest. Not once did he say he had chosen someone else. Not once did he acknowledge the betrayal. It was easier for him to blame my reaction than to accept responsibility for his choices. And that's when I understood. He didn't want forgiveness. He wanted validation. He wanted me to nod and say, Yes, you're right. I drove you to this. He wanted a clean conscience, more than he wanted a healthy relationship. When I stood up from the table, he looked scared, not because he feared losing me, but because he realized the script he had prepared no longer fit the scene unfolding before him.
I didn't yell.
I didn't plead. I didn't fight. I simply said, I hope she treats you better than the lies you told. He stared at me in silence, as if he didn't recognize the person standing in front of him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he only recognized the version of me he had created. We lived together for 2 more days after that conversation, 2 days in which he pretended everything was normal. He cooked dinner, asked about my day, and even sat next to me on the couch. I acted politely, but inside, I was already gone. Once trust breaks, you stop seeing a partner, you start seeing a stranger wearing the face of someone you used to love. On the 3rd day, I packed my things. I didn't take everything. Just my clothes, my books, and the pieces of myself he hadn't managed to shatter. As I zipped the last suitcase, he watched me from the door. Are you really leaving? He asked quietly. I already left, I said. You just didn't notice. People think heartbreak is loud, but mine wasn't. It was quiet, dignified, and strangely calm. Pain becomes bearable when you know the truth, even when the truth isn't pretty. He had spent months creating his version of reality. A reality where he was the hero escaping the villain. But the moment I walked out, he had nothing left to fight against. His truth lost its purpose because the person he built it around was no longer there. I didn't leave because he cheated. I left because he lied. I left because he created a story where I was always wrong. I left because he stopped choosing honesty the moment it became inconvenient. I left because he needed me to be the problem, so he could pretend he was the solution. He called me several times after I moved out. Sometimes he apologized, but the kind of apology that shifts blame. I'm sorry you feel hurt. Sometimes he asked if we could talk. Sometimes he acted like nothing had happened. It took weeks before the truth finally cracked through his rehearsed lines. One night, he admitted everything. Not because he wanted to heal the relationship, but because she had broken his heart the same way he broke mine. That was the irony he never expected. The truth he created swallowed him whole. He cried when he told me she had left him for someone else. He cried when he said he wished he could undo everything. He cried when he admitted he pushed me away because he believed she was a better version of me, someone who would make him feel more important, more desired, more heroic. But truth doesn't reward the people who twist it. It exposes them. When he asked if we could start over, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt nothing. He had drained every emotion from me long before he confessed. You lost me, I said gently. Not to her. Not to the lies. You lost me to the truth you created. He closed his eyes, as if the sentence hit him harder than anything she had done. Because deep down, he knew it was true. He knew he had built a world where I was never enough, and in doing so, he made sure he would never get me back. I walked away that night, not as the abandoned partner he wanted me to be, but as someone who finally understood her worth. Truth didn't break me. It freed me. Months passed. I built a new life piece by piece. I explored the silence that used to scare me. I rediscovered laughter, not the kind interrupted by suspicion, but the kind that rattles through your chest without apology. I traveled alone, ate alone, healed alone, and in that solitude, I learned something important. Love doesn't disappear when someone breaks it. It simply returns to the person who gave it. He still tries to reach out sometimes. A message on a holiday. A long paragraph on lonely nights. A voice note he never should have sent. But I don't respond anymore. I don't need closure from someone who created his own truth to escape accountability. I don't hate him. I don't resent him. I don't wish him pain. But I also don't want him back. Because once someone rewrites your character and their story to justify their choices, you can never trust them with the pen again. He lost me, not because the truth hurt, but because the truth belonged to him, not to reality. And in the end, he was the only one who believed it. That's the thing about truth. You can shape it, stretch it, manipulate it, or bury it. but eventually it uncovers itself. And when it does, it doesn't just reveal what happened, it reveals who a person truly is. He lost me to the truth he created. And I found myself in the truth he could never face.